Syncing the mic. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that should do the trick. Alright, today we're looking at The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, and I'll be reviewing this book. It's not going to be like a proper review, it's not going to be a critical breakdown, because I think it's already been done. It was released 70 years ago. I just want to give a perspective that I had, and that's what I want to do. I want to spend the rest of the year reviewing all the books that I'm going to read. So that's what this is. This book is like automatically pushed to the category of cozy catastrophe, and I think the word was coined for this book because it really sits there. Basically, cozy catastrophe is when an entire civilization suffers a tragedy, but the protagonist survives it with little to no damage, and then finds the meaning in life by escaping voice crack, by escaping the societal hierarchy. In other words, the protagonist really doesn't have a purpose in life. He's a fucking loser. I didn't say that, the book says it. And then the catastrophe hits. Everybody else has gone blind, but the protagonist is like, I've got a reason now. I am better than everybody else. That's what a cozy catastrophe is. And they don't really suffer through the book. Not really. It's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a criticism in itself, and I don't really see that as something that should be avoided. Do it, make characters that are fucking losers and then give them purpose. Let's see where it goes. Let's talk about literature, because it's here. It's very much rooted in this book. We start with the satellite. One of the main things that you recall when reading about the satellite is this book was published before the first satellite was ever launched. I didn't recall it, I googled it. I wasn't sure. The first one was launched in about 1956, and it was by Russians. It was an American. It was Soviet Union at the time, but it was not the Americans who did it. But everybody at the time thought that it was going to be America. And that is quite visible in this book, where they think that the Americans are the savior. When everything else goes to shit, everybody else in Britain is like, you know what? We're going to look up to the sky, a plane's going to fly by, the Americans, they're going to come and rescue us. They never do. But the idea in itself comes from history. It was the America who kind of ended the World War II. They're the ones who had nukes back then, and everybody else just looked at them like, holy fucking shit, they can end the world if they wanted to. And that is visible here as well. And I think it's kind of a good thing to look back 70 years ago. What were the people thinking? I'm not sure. I don't have anything to back this up with, because in 1951, I presume a lot of the information about the nukes were classified. So I don't think John Wyndham had information about how nukes work. But we do get to see that with the Triffids. They are kind of similar to it, because they are used as a weapon. Not used, but they're viewed as a weapon. It's a means of profit, but if you don't look after it, it becomes a weapon. Same thing with the nuke. We got reactors that needs to be cooled down, that needs to be looked after. And if the human civilization was to just die, it's going to blow up. That's what happens with the Triffids. And I think it's a reference to the atom bomb to some extent, even though not a lot of information was available back then, but I think people doubted it. I don't know, it is nice to look at it that way. One of the other things that we get to see here is a lot of questions is raised about gender roles. A lot of questions are raised, but not a lot of answers. None at all, if anything. But that doesn't come across as a surprising thing, because it was published 2 decades after women were allowed to vote. So we don't get to see a lot of far ahead perspective that we have now. But what's really interesting about those questions that John Wyndham raised is that a lot of it is just ignorance. It's a lot of the times we get to see that from a perspective of a different character. The main character is a boring piece of shit. He doesn't really have anything interesting to say. It's a character called Cocker. I think that's his name. I don't care at this point. I think that's his name. He's the one who raises these questions, and it's mostly ignorance, where Cocker comes across as somebody who's like, you should know how to do these things, even though you're a woman, you don't get a fucking excuse, while ignoring all the suppression and everything. That's the most we're getting out of it. Right, what else did I enjoy about this book? I'll tell you what though, I went into this book no idea what the book was. I didn't read the back page. I was traveling, I was in a bus, and I started reading it. And I was at first I thought that I was reading about an old man in a care home. The bus was a bit bumpy and I wasn't able to focus, but that's what I thought. And then I thought that I don't want to read a book about an old man on a bed when I'm traveling, so I read what it was about. But even when I read it, I didn't read that the entire civilization goes blind. What I did read was that it's about a Trifid, it's about a plant that comes alive. So that first chapter was fucking amazing, where you learn that the world has gone blind. It takes you by surprise if you don't know what you're getting into, because you do get to speculate a lot of things, like, you know that an asteroid passed by, and in your head you're thinking, holy fucking shit, it's the radiation, it's the ultraviolet rays, whatever it was, you're thinking to yourself, you're questioning it, and you're like, I can't wait to see what happens next, I can't wait to see who survives, what kind of people survives, and it's really interesting. The second chapter is the best chapter in this book. Unfortunately, it peaks in the second chapter, but it does get better towards the end. But second chapter, just fucking amazing. We get to learn how the Triffids came to be. We get to learn the history. We get to learn a character who brought it here, the character who brought it to UK, and how it's spread across the world. It's written beautifully. It's amazing. I'm surprised the book falls really fucking short afterwards, because with that kind of writing, it had potential to just make this book one of the best books I've ever read. But it's a good chapter. Then things start to get fucking bumpy. We get to the third or fourth chapter, where in third chapter it's still good. We get to see the world, we get to see how London is coping with this, we get to see blind people walking about like zombies. You can't write a better scene than that for that scene, but it just fucking takes a toll after that. And this is where things really start to go to shit, because we get to see the character in action, and we get to see the choices that he makes, and we get to see how delusional the character really is. And although the character, Bill Mason, he does spend the first half of the novel, in fact he spends the entire novel complaining how sad he is and how depressing it is that we get to see the fall of civilization. He looks at the buildings, he looks at the parliament, and he's like, oh, this is where they used to make decisions. We can't have that anymore. It's fucking sad. Even though he says that, his life found a purpose and a meaning through this tragedy. And it is on the third chapter that we're introduced to the second most important character in the whole novel. I think it's the third chapter, it could be fourth, I don't know. Her name is Josella. So how do we get to meet her? Bill Mason is walking down the street. He's looking at all the blind people suffering. He's seeing the zombies that they've become, and he hears a noise. Somebody's fucking screaming. Everybody's screaming, but this scream, he's like, oh, it's fucking strange, this scream. I have to investigate this scream. So he goes down an alley, and he finds a woman pinned down by a man. She's all tied, she can't move, and the man is on top of her, and he's like, I'm gonna save her. He goes on, he kicks him, recognizes that he's blind. So he's like, okay, he's an evil man still, he's still trying to assault somebody. The man tries to punch him, he can't fucking see, so he can't hit him. But Bill Mason, when he gets a chance to punch him in the face, he's like, I can't do it. Look at his face, he's blind, I can't punch him. Because according to him, it's a bit difficult to punch a blind rapist, but he doesn't do it. Which is not a problem, but it's a character trait that we have to deal with for the rest of the book. Josella is saved, and she's all worried, but we realise that she can see, she's not blind. Like Bill Mason, she's not blind. It is at this point that I realised that we're going to get a romantic interest between these two characters, and I was like, you know what, I'm okay with it, as long as it's not fucking cliche. I'm okay with it. I wanted to read a book about tragedy, you know. I wanted to read a book, but the first two chapters got me interested in learning about Triffids and I don't know, blind people, how would they survive? This is not one of the things that I wanted to read, but I was worried that's what I was going to get. And that is precisely what we fucking get, and it's the worst possible way the writer could have written it. But we have to deal with it because the best part of the book comes after these two fucking character deal. I'll get to it. It's so fucking annoying talking about this. I didn't want to be critical, but it's difficult not to be. So once Josella is rescued, they go find a shelter at a bar. They have a drink, and the first thing Josella says is, and I fucking quote, the first thing that she says is, "God, I must look awful." Yeah, that would be the first thing in my mind, in anybody's mind, after being assaulted, after being dragged across the town by somebody. The first thing you think is, "God, I must look fucking awful. I need to comb my fucking hair." But that is what this character does, and I think it's a trait that happens a lot in like a book written by written in 1951 by a man. I presume that happens a lot, but I don't know, it made me laugh. I thought it was funny to some extent, but I don't think it was written as a funny thing. I don't think it was a humour, but still made me laugh. It's a bit annoying, but I'll let it go because it made me laugh. For instance, in a film which is like 3 hours long at best, we do get to see characters who are not really developed. We do get to see those things where we question, well, is this really love? Is this what it is? Because you don't have time to develop these characters. But in a novel, you do have time. You could write another 20, 30 pages and nobody would complain. You can do that. But John Wyndham refuses to do it. He doesn't spend a lot of time with these two characters for us to believe that they might be in love. So instead of showing us that, he just tells us that. He's like, yeah, they're in love. They're very much in love. So we just have to believe it. And that is one of those things that falls short because the next bit of the book is about these two. And I do feel like this book should have been 100 pages longer. That would have been so much better if we had seen Josella and Will Mason interact a bit more. While we do get to see these two characters interact and we do get to learn about Josella a bit, it doesn't seem enough. What we do get to see is we learn about her past while she's speaking about her past, which is always a bad idea to develop a character. We need to see them in action. We don't get that here, not in the first bit. What we learn is that she becomes a writer, she runs away from home, has to go back to home. She survives it. She can see she was dragged along by this man until Bill Mason comes and rescues her. It is a good enough reason to have your loyalty and be like, you know what, I do want to stick around Bill Mason because he saved me. Fair enough. But what does Bill Mason... He doesn't have a fucking reason to stay. I'm getting annoyed that I'm forgetting words. Fucking, I have to redo this again. Fuck you, Bill. And while we do get to see these two characters interact, we do get to see them do whatever they're fucking doing. Which is not a lot. For instance, we get Josella. She wears a pretty dress, stands in front of a window with Bill and says goodbye to the world they once knew. What a waste of time. Do something else. Let me learn about these characters in a meaningful way. You have no reason to stand with this person in front of a window and make us believe that I'm going to give a shit. Maybe you do. You as a reader do. This is like a personal opinion of mine. One scene really made me believe that the rest of their story is going to be just as shit. And it is, to some extent. Then... I don't know, then the next day happens. We don't get to see it often. We learn about her past, and that's about it, really. They talk a bit. Not really, but it's a random fucking things they talk about. Then they go to sleep. They wake up, and they join a council of people who can see, who also have a bunch of people who are blind. So it's a council of people, basically, who's going to help blind people who can't see. So in this council, we get to learn one of this is what I wish the book was about. We get to learn that doctors are going to be important. If you're a doctor, you're a fucking hero. You know, you're the most important person in the book. We get to learn how are they going to survive? How exactly are they going to rebuild the society? But it falls short right there because this one man steps up and he's like, we're better than blind people, we can fucking see, we should rule the fucking world, we're gonna fuck the blind women and we're not gonna look after the men who are blind because they can't see. His idea being that one of the most important things to society or civilization is to rebuild, and you need more people who can see. Let's reproduce, let's fuck these blind women, let's get all the men together. They're not questioning if these people who can see are fertile or not. We don't know if they're shooting blanks, but he's all for it, you know, let's do it. He doesn't have a fucking reason not to do it. And at this point, I'm like, okay, these two characters who are supposedly the main characters are going to look at it and they're going to think, let's go somewhere else. You know, we don't want to deal with this. But nah. Josella, which took me by surprise, by the way, Josella not totally agrees to it, but he's like, she talks to Bill and she's like, if you want to fuck me, you're gonna fuck 3 more blind women. And Bill is like, I can't do it. I can't fucking do it. I just want you. I don't want anybody else. And Josella is like, no. You have to fuck 2 more blind women. In fact, I'm gonna pick 2 nice... This is what she says. You won't need to worry at all, my dear. I shall choose 2 nice, sensible girls. Now, luckily, before all the raping begins, there's a riot that breaks out, and the people who can't see, the blind people, they kidnap the people who can see, and they're like, alright, you're gonna be our guide dogs, we're gonna treat you like shit, and you're gonna help us survive. This is where these two characters are separated. Bill is separated from Josella, and I'm like, thank fucking God. I hope they never see each other again. But Jesus fucking Christ, Bill, all he wants is to see Josella again, and it's not a surprising thing at all. Bill really didn't have a life before this, so for the first time, a woman looked at him and he's like, you know what, I'll have you. He's like, holy fucking shit, I'm gonna do everything in my hand to find where the fuck she is, even though I've known her for 24 hours. I'm in love, goddammit. And that's what he does here. His survival instinct is to find Josella. And I'm like, is this what the book is about? Am I going to read a book about a man trying to find a woman who he's known for less than a day? That is what the book is about. A few interesting things happen in between, but not enough. One of the best things that happens in this book is we do get to see a character called Cooker. I think that's his name. Basically, he's the person who's caused the riot. He's the reason why Bill Mason and Josella is separated, and Bill knows this, but he sees Bill, they hatch things out, he apologizes, he finds redemption. He is more interesting than Bill. Honestly, I wish he was the main character. He's a bit naive and stupid, but he's interesting. His stupidity really shows, and I think it's a bit funny. We go to this place, which is like a shelter. I don't know what it is. It seems like a religious place. It's hard to pinpoint actually what it is because it is built on a broken society. We go there and we realize that it's run by a woman, and that woman is religious and she doesn't know how to start an electrical engine. Cocker sees this and he's like, that engine's been here for a week and these people don't have electricity, they're blind, they can't see either way. How dare you not know how to start it? And the woman's like, well, I don't know, I'm a girl, I don't know how to fucking start an engine. And Cocker goes, well, it's your fault you never knew how to do this. But to some extent, we did get to sympathize with these both characters, and Cocker really comes as naive because he ignores all the suppression and oppression that went until that point for someone like that woman to not know how to start an engine. But Cocker is like, no, I'm all for equality, you're a fucking moron for not knowing it yourself. It takes place in 1951. I don't blame the girl for not knowing how to start an engine. I don't know how to start an engine, you know. So, but we do get to see Cocker in this really obnoxious manner. And it's difficult to hate the character because he knows how to survive. He was the only person who can, with a vision, who was like, you know what? I'm not going to rape all these women. I'm going to save the blind people in my own accord. And he did it. Anyway, the story moves on. The woman from the shelter, she's like, oh, Josella, yeah, she went that way. And they're like, oh, let's go that way. She lies, though. She doesn't have a fucking clue. But they go that way, but they can't find her. It's a waste of time. But they do meet a lot of interesting people along the way who also can see. They're not blind. And they're like, yeah, we'll help you find this woman. But we'll wait until the Americans come. Something to do, isn't it? Now, they've wasted their time. They can't find Josella anywhere. And that's when they get an idea. What if we had a helicopter? It'll be easy. They do have a helicopter, except they don't know how to fly it. That's where we meet the best character in the book, the funniest character in the book, the Radio Man. No one knows how to fly a helicopter, but Radio Man steps up. And when Cocker asks him, do you know how to fly a helicopter? He's like, no. I don't, but how difficult can it be? And then he flies it. Just like that, off the bat, he flies it. Now, I think that this was written as humour. Back in the day, everybody would have hated it, but I think it's funny. I laughed a lot at this scene. I laughed a lot, actually. I read it and I was like, what in the fuck am I reading? How is this possible? But it's funny. It's one of those things where it's like, you're not going to like it, but your grandchildren are going to love it. It's the best, funniest scene in the book. I think it's the second best funniest. The first funniest being Josella being worried about how she looks after getting assaulted. But even with a helicopter, we can't find Josella, and Cocker unfortunately has to give up. And he's like, "All right, man, I'm gonna go to the shelter with the religious woman, and I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna tell her to step down. I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna turn the electricity on." And Bill is like, I've got to find her, man. I've got one final idea of where she could be. I want to find her. She's the love of my life, and I'm gonna find her. And Cocker's like, all right, you do you. I wish we got to see more of Cocker and Bill, because they have more chemistry than Bill and Josella. Reasonably so, because they've spent more time together with a purpose, while Bill and Josella didn't really do anything. But Bill says goodbye, he goes, and it is on this journey that we witness the saddest fucking death in literature. It's more sad than, what's his name? It's more tragic than Cedric Diggory. It's more sad than The Red Wedding. It's more sad than both of them combined. We get the death of Tommy. Oh, why am I happy? Until that point in the novel, I had sympathy for Triffids. It's like, they're a plant, they're in planet Earth, let them survive. They have right to live as much as the next person. But after we witness Tommy's death, we feel like, fuck the plants, I'm gonna kill them myself. Tommy is a kid, he's stung by one of these things, and his sister tries to help him, but the plant is like, you're not getting anywhere near. So the sister has to stand there and just look at her brother laying on the floor and just wait him to die. It's really tragic. We don't get a lot of these in the books. Even this scene is quite short, but it had an effect. It is the saddest scene in the book, and it's there for like 5 minutes. And it's not even one of the main characters. It speaks a lot about this book. Either way, he goes on, and what do you know? He finds Josella. Honestly, I was hoping that she'd be dead, but she's alive. Now we have to deal with their story for like 40 more pages. Luckily, it takes a turn. John Wyndham decides that, you know what, I'm going to put an effort into it. I'm going to make them live their lives together for a long period of time. That's what happens. Years go by. They find this place where they can shelter themselves. They're fighting plants. They are harvesting things to eat. They're, I don't know, saving patrol. They're doing a lot of things, and they learn that Triffids can be quite dangerous, and that's where Triffids really come into play in this book. Towards the end, and the book is called The Day of the Triffids, the book should have been called Finding Josella, because that's what this is about, but towards the end, the book becomes interesting because it's about Triffids. We get to learn that they are way smarter than we actually thought. It was hinted in the beginning, but we do get to learn that towards the end. They have what Bill Mason doesn't. They have time and patience, so they can just stand there and wait until things fall apart, and it's really scary. It becomes extremely scary when we learn that these things have broken in, they've evaded the barricades, and they could just fucking kill everybody in an instant. It's really fucking scary. But like I said, it's the last 40 pages, so the book has to end at some point. And this is where everything that has been built up just fell apart for me. I think it's just a me thing, and I'm not criticizing the book. Basically, we get to see a character come back from the past. He's an evil character who's previously killed somebody in front of Bill, and he knows that he's an evil character. In that first scene, Bill Mason is fucking scared. He's properly scared. Towards the end, when he meets the same character again, and when he threatens the family, we get to learn some sort of bravery, but not enough. I think there should have been more, and I think I'm picking little mistakes here, but I think that should have been like the full circle. He kills him, or rather sabotages that thing. He does that, and he escapes, which I think is a bit cowardly. If I was in his place, I would have done the same. But it's a novel, and I wish we had seen him. Maybe, I don't know, shoot him in the head or something. It's a difficult thing to pull off, but I wish that would have happened. But it's not a complaint. I just wish it was the case. And that's where the book ends. He escapes, might live a good life in an island, might not. That last chapter, or the last two chapters, is amazing. I wish that was the book. I wish Josella was his wife in the beginning, not a character that he runs into, so we'll have a reason to worry. If that was the case, I'd have absolutely no complaint about this book, but unfortunately that is the case. If I have to rate this book, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The only complaint being the annoying characters, but the book is still interesting. It's still really well written. If it was written last year, I would have given it a fucking 0, but it wasn't. It was written ages ago, and we have to consider that as well. Yeah, all in all, I love the book. Will I read it again? Fuck no.